Hey and welcome to my COTA National GT3 guide for Le Mans Ultimate. This time we're driving the Ferrari 296 GT3 with all my brake bias, traction control and AB settings on the left of the screen now. The first and last part of this track is the same as the main layout, but we're going to go through it again anyway. So up to the first turn, we're looking for that second Rolex board on the right there, and we're braking just before we get to the white line that's alongside the Rolex board. Starting all the way on the right side of the track, and we're aiming for a mid to late apex here. You have to go in quite deep, then turn in, and avoid that steep orange curb on the inside because that will unstabilize the car and potentially ruin your exit. But come nice and tight to the apex there, and then as you get to the apex you can start picking up the throttle, carrying momentum to the outside of the track, and then we're going to start bringing the car back to the left over there where the green arrow is to open up our entry line for this long right turn. All the way around this track, the track limit is the white line except for the very last corner, but we'll get to that soon. Here you can run your right side wheels along the red area, keeping your left side wheels within the white line there, shortening your line as much as possible and gaining some extra time. Now here we're going to aim to touch the orange curbs through each apex of this section. So right here on the apex we want to just touch that orange curb, keeping our right side wheels within the white line. And between the two turns here, between the two apexes, we can touch the brakes just to shave off a little bit of speed. We need to slow down a little bit for this apex here. Again, we're aiming to touch that orange curb on the apex there. Keeping left side wheels within the white line this time. And make sure you do slow down a little bit because you want to bring the car back towards the right just a bit here to open up your entry line for this left turn. If you go straight towards the apex, you're going to make the turn quite tight for yourself. Again, we're aiming to touch that inside orange curb there. These orange curbs are flat enough for you to run over them, so they shouldn't bounce you out wide. And then one more time, we're coming around to touch the inside edge of that orange curb on the apex there. Now we're lining ourselves up for the braking point for this turn, which is not very long. Now here you should be aiming to get onto the brakes just as you come off of the curb after you get past the apex here. Where I've marked out on screen, you're coming off the curb, touching the brakes, slowing the car down a bit, then cutting your left side wheels a little bit onto the red area on this apex here, again focusing on keeping your right side wheels within the white line, using all of the track width, then back towards the left. We don't want to cut over the track limits over here, make sure you keep your left side wheels within the white line, and the track dips down here. As the track begins to dip, we're going to start braking, and then again we're cutting a little bit over this curb on the inside there. Left side wheels onto the red area, right side wheels within the white line. Be sure not to carry too much speed in, very easy to understeer and exit there. Now down here we're looking for the final Michelin board right there, and there's a dry patch of grass on the outside of the track there where it's a bit brown. We can use that as our braking reference, braking at the start of that brown patch. Right side wheels on the outside of the curb on entry to open up your entry line as much as you can, really slowing down the car here and apexing just next to the orange curb without getting onto it, because again it's deep and it'll bounce you out and ruin your exit. Using all the track width here, coming all the way to the point where your left side wheels are just along the edge of the white line, but not crossing it because that'll invalidate your lap. Then back to the left side of the track where we're looking for that white line on the outside of the curb there, using that as a braking reference, braking just as we get to it. We're going to have a mid apex right alongside the orange sausage curb on the inside without touching it because it'll push us offline. We don't want that. Coming tight on the flat curb, and then we're picking up the throttle at the apex of this turn here, but not getting to 100% throttle immediately. We don't want to nail the throttle too early because we'll get the car into a slide, which we don't want. Balancing the throttle and the steering inputs coming out of there, and then we're cutting a bit over this curb right here, shortening our line, and then right at this point we're aiming back towards the right side of the track to open up our entry line for this upcoming hairpin. Going towards the right here, and then we're looking for that curb on the left where that starts. We're braking a bit before that curb starts in the middle of the track, and we're really going to flow to the outside of the track here. I could have probably gone even a little bit wider to have a later apex here, because you're going to go wide and then you're going to apex quite late in this turn next to the orange curb. I think I might have touched the orange curb here, which isn't perfect, but very close, and then having a late apex to straighten your exit line. Back to the left, looking out for that white line on the outside of the track there, starting to commit to the turn just after that white line, turning in quite a long turn here, and you will need to lift off throttle. There's a first apex that we're just at right now, and there's a second apex that I've marked out as the lift reference over there. We're going to be lifting off throttle before we get to that second apex to allow the car to turn in a bit. Being patient, then getting back on throttle, because if you get on throttle too early, you're going to go wide on the X on the left there. Now back towards the right, we're looking between the two Avis boards on the right there and braking a little bit closer to the second Avis board. On entry to this turn, you can put your right side wheels on the outside curb there, but it makes the car slightly more reluctant to turn in. Then carry your speed through this apex. You can actually run over the sausage curb there. It doesn't affect the car too much. I prefer to come narrowly alongside the sausage curb, but you can go over it if your line suits it. Then all the way to the outside of the track. And I've noticed for some reason on the short layout of the track, you can't go too far to the right here, because if your left side wheels even touch the white line, and it invalidates your lap. No idea why. Maybe it'll change in the future, but usually you can put your right side wheels outside the curb and you should be fine. Anyway, last turn I did outbrake myself a little bit here. You want to apex just alongside the orange curb without getting onto it, then picking up the throttle, balancing your throttle and steering inputs on exit because it's easy to flick into an oversteer there. Now we cross the line and we put our right side wheels on the outside of the white line to prepare ourselves for the next lap. Now I'm going to play through the whole lap again without any interruptions, and then I'll come back at the end of the lap for a pit entry guide. I'll see you then. For the pit entry of this track, we'll take this turn like we normally do, and as we exit it, we're coming towards the left, aiming towards the pit lane entry there. Now there's an oversport on the right side of the track there, and we're going to start braking about alongside that, or just before it. Quite hard on the brakes here, this is a tight turn, and then towards the left, probably down to first gear, you might get a bit of oversteer and exit as you go over the crest. Then there'll be a white line that goes across the pit lane there, and we're going to brake just before we get to that, hard on the brakes. That will bring us to 60 km per hour before the line, and that is the guide complete for this layout. I hope this helps out. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all again in the next video.